I really find the people that you interview fascinating. I find people's processes and the way that they think and stuff like that. Um, but I'm often finding myself like I don't relate to it, as in I understand it and I found it fascinating, but I think to myself, God, I don't do it anyway. I don't. My world doesn't work that way. So you know,
Interesting.
I hear lots of people about, the tediousness of it. And I'm thinking, for God's sake, if it's tedious, why bother doing it? I wouldn't do it. I love it. I have a passion for it. And a lot of people to kind of fall into it, seem to like they use it as their, they found it as a technique and they find stitching as a technique and they incorporate it into their art practice, which I find
Mm,
interesting and I kind of totally relate to. But that's not me,
hmm.
I've stitched all my life, so it's not something I've discovered. It's just something I do. And so this business, also, this people seem so fixated over whether something's an art or a craft. I find that mind blowing. Of course, the male thing is all I find fascinating.
Yeah,
Also
we've
the
got plenty of ground to cover, let's be honest.
Yeah, and the European, so Eurocentric kind of concept of embroidery. It's all, the concept of, slightly elderly women, middle class women stitching away, because
Mm,
that's all that they were ever able to do. I kind of, yeah, sure. But like, there's also like, sheds of men in Pakistan stitching away embroidery, making fabulous. There's Persia. There's China is a whole another ball game of embroidery. Eastern Europe, I'm supposed to go European, but you look at the traditions in Eastern Europe. I get the sort of the 1800 sampler kind of whatever. That's not my bag, as in, I find it interesting hearing people talk about it, but I don't feel that's my tradition or that's my origin or that's not my, it's like somebody talking classical music when I'm into, say, punk or heavy metal.
hmm.
It's a similar world,
Mm.
but like I had this, my dad liked Austrian Umpa music, and I liked rock and roll. We didn't kind of sit down and talk about music. I didn't feel like we
Yeah,
had a shared. So like when I see sort of like this, you know, that aspect, I'm like even in America and stuff like that with the quilting and all this kind of, find it really, really interesting because it's a branch off the same tree, but like whoa, it's a completely it's growing apples and I'm growing coconuts. It's a
yeah. I
different
like
ball
that.
game. Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, so I don't want to classify your work. I don't feel like it's right. I want you to tell me what your work is like. But I will say
Right.
this, it has raw power. That's what I think.
Thank you. Yeah, well, gosh, yeah, no, that sounds, I like the term. Yeah, Rob. Yeah, I don't know. I've had it described, lots of other people have described it in lots of different ways. Psychedelia has come into it, and I kind of think, oh, yeah, I'm, as a kid, I loved cartoons. I loved the Freak Brothers and
Hmm.
Crumb. Do you know Crumb?
Yeah, yeah,
Crumb?
Robert Crumb, of
Yeah,
course. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I love that. Loved that. I
Mm.
used to like Rick Griffin. Do you know Rick Griffin? He did.
What?
He was like akin to the Family Dog. They did
Right.
posters based, I think, out of San Francisco in the '60s.
Yeah.
That kind of era, that where they did the posters with all the crazy lettering and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah,
Rick
yeah. The
Griffin,
name of the place escapes me now, but there's a theatre, isn't there? And I used to just have a
the
save
Avalon,
search on eBay. No, Fillmore, Fillmore. That kind
Fillmore.
of
Yeah,
style, isn't it? With the
yeah,
typography that was all
exactly.
very groovy in that. Yeah, yeah.
And I was fascinated by that. So I can certainly see I can see a nod to it, and that's the kind of thing that I like. I love folk art, I love, like when you look at as I say, the Turkestan, the Afghanistan, that kind of Eastern embroidery tradition, Pakistan, Northern India. I love all that imagery.
Like
So
cruel work
yes,
and
I
that
mean
kind
that
of thing.
style. I like crewel work. Yeah, I certainly use some crewel work techniques. I like the idea of, I can't sort of nail it down, and I don't have a word. I call it
It's
flow
interesting. It's
stitching.
interesting. Flow
Flow
stitching. Yeah.
stitching. It is that's a kind of a little ironic or nudge at the slow stitching concept. You come across slow stitching?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's like, like as in the slow food and stuff like that.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And I've joined a couple of slow stitching groups on Facebook, and I find that interesting because they're doing it rather than more about the process than the result. So
Yeah.
I don't know. Mine doesn't really. I don't do my work slowly. I actually seem to work quite fast, so it doesn't work in that. But it's very much. I'm very much focused on the process. So for me, I don't draw designs. I don't use patterns. I don't use a parachute. I just start stitching and see what comes out of it. And I kind of like to think I'm putting myself in a meditative zone where I'm able to communicate somehow, maybe the wrong word, with my subconscious. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to allow, so I'm kind of witnessing what I do. So yes, part of it is contrived. I have concepts, I have ideas, I have intent. I know I'm trying to do a piece for a particular reason. It's probably easier to look at each example, each piece as a different example. So I do denim jackets. I'm well known for my denim
Yeah.
jackets. What I do is I talk to the client a lot. So on
Right.
Messenger, we chat away. So I want whoever I'm doing it for, I want sort of things that are going to trigger my imagination, trigger my creative energies or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So the date of their birth, and you get into astrology and symbolism of astrology. So if they're a Scorpio, I might do a Scorpio. Recently I did one for a kid, that I found out they were a tiger in the Chinese. I got their date of birth, and they were a
Mm-hmm.
tiger. So I thought, oh, well, a tiger would be a nice idea. So I started drawing a tiger, stitching a tiger. But they were also, they were born in Georgia in the USA. So incorporated the state flower or the state
Mm-hmm.
tree. I'm doing one at the moment for somebody, and the state tree I think that is for them is the elm. So I'm using the elm leaf kind of pattern design within it. What else am I
Mm-hmm.
doing? They're into clocks, watches. One of their hobby is collecting watches. So
Horology.
I'm using it's that way. So I'm using imagery of a clock face. I've done jackets for them, like that tiger, and they're a tiger as well. So I'm thinking of maybe doing an adult tiger with a baby tiger. So they'd like me to take images that I've done for their grandchildren and put it into their jacket. So straight away,
Mm.
the central theme is kind of a grandfather clock. So he's the
Yeah.
grandfather. So then surrounding the grandfather clock will be the tree as a symbol of a family tree. But there'll also be, keep looking away because I'm looking at it, but there's a mermaid on it because he's got a tattoo of a mermaid, and his granddaughter, I did a mermaid with a cowboy hat. So I like to hide all that kind of imagery
Mm.
in amongst it, but I don't sit down and go, that's I'm doing a piece to say at the moment. I know I'm going to do a tiger at some stage. I'm not quite sure what style I'm going to do it in. I'm not quite sure where it's going to go on the jacket. But as I'm stitching, the ideas will come, and then I'll go, oh yeah, no, that will blend into that, and that will blend. Yeah, this would be a good place to put that, or that kind of thing. So it's kind of, but some of the linking material, I just go like, I like that design. I use a lot of Celtic designs, because
Mm.
that's kind of ancestral. So I like using some of the rock art, and I use some of the Viking knotwork as well. But designs, now I'm not looking at a book and going, oh, I'm going to do that one. But I would have looked at a book over the years, so I kind of have a store of designs in my head, but they're all very loose and they all
When
come
you
together.
first started talking about it, it was making me think of automatic writing, where you're just
Yeah, that's
going with the
probably an
flow, not really
element.
thinking about it.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
what's interesting is what you've said further now when you're talking about working on commission, if you like, working for other people.
Huh.
It's kind of like improvisational theatre where a story has to
Yeah.
be
Oh, I
told,
like that.
and you've got like a start point and you've got an outcome, but
Huh.
exactly how the pieces unfold to reach that outcome just gets made up in the moment, kind of.
Yes. Absolutely. I remember one I was pleased with is I was talking to the grandmother of somebody who had commissioned. The grandmother had commissioned a jacket for her granddaughter and son. Sorry, because that was dreadful, wasn't it? But he was having issues because they had this soft toy that the kid loved, but was getting very grubby and wouldn't let
Mm,
mum wash it. So I incorporated into the jacket it was a pig. So I
hmm.
ended up stitching a pig in the bath, in the bubble bath. He would get him washed. So like he would see his jacket and go, oh, can I give my? And I got a lovely little comment from mum saying, "Nice try." I don't know whether it worked or not, but I think she saw the pig in the bath. So that's the other thing I like is the fact that they the person who owns it or the people involved, if it's a family thing, so maybe it's for a kid, but the mum will look at it and they'll see all. Oh yeah, I stitched they have Irish descendancy, so they were in America. They were in America. So I stitched the old Irish 2p coin, which has a Celtic knotwork pattern on it. So I she told me this lovely story of they used when they were kids they used to go to their grandfather who was Irish, and as kids he would always give them a 2p coin. It was like after mass or on the Sunday or something like that. And so I stitched into the jacket the design from the 2p coin, but then I also, the shishka embroidery with the mirrors,
Right, right,
where
right.
the
Yeah.
yeah. So I used that to actually put a coin around an old Irish 2p coin.
Okay.
So that is incorporated into the jacket. So if you weren't aware, you'd look at it and you'd go, "That's a nice design. That looks nice."
Hmm.
But mum and grandmum will look at it and go, that's will be able to say to the kid when they're older, that's heritage. That's part of your heritage. That's the coin. That's the type of coin your great grandfather gave us, sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And do you like working with denim then? Because yeah, you do a lot of denim
Love
jackets.
denim. Love denim.
Yeah.
Yeah, lots of reasons. One, I only really I don't buy material. I don't buy like new material.
Mm,
Denim is really easily available in the charity shops. I can get,
hmm.
I can quite often, a lot of the people in charity shops know me around here. So they kind of know what I'm looking for. So, and I love huge pairs of denim trousers, somebody with a very, very large waist
Mm,
because I get a huge amount of fabric and I can get pick up. I don't know. I often pick them up for 50 cents
right.
a pair, and
Yeah.
I can get an awful lot out of denim out of one pair of jeans. So I like the fact it's recyclable. It's tough, it's hardy, it's masculine. It's there's lots of things I like about it. I'll tell you an origin thing is years and years ago, being male and stitching, I had some pretty negative experiences as a kid. I remember taking my piece that I'd stitched into school as an art project when I was still at primary school. So I'd have been like maybe 8 or 9, maybe 10, I think it was. Yeah, because it was the year before I left. So I took in this piece. We'd been asked to do a project of a piece by our favorite, a copy sort of thing, or inspired by our favorite artist. And we was most people, of course, would have done paintings and drawings and stuff. But I did an embroidery and I took it in and I remember the teacher was absolutely blown away with it. They were like completely unexpected. I'd never told anybody I did embroidery at school. It just never come up. And they were like, wow, I actually, maybe in my imagination, but I actually think it almost brought a tear to her eye, to see this.
Right.
She was like just completely gobsmacked by it. And I was feeling like, yeah, king of the castle, whoa. And then I remember lunchtime in the playground and coming across some very unpleasant because I was this big girl's blouse, because I sewed like a girl, and I had comments about being a girly for the following year, for a whole year, on the fact that
Right.
just from this bringing that in. So I had that was a kind of a negative thing. What I was leading on to is I had a sort of similar experience at secondary school or boys' school, whatever. I should have learned to be a secret stitcher. But I ended up, my brother was in a biker gang, and one of his friends saw, I won't go into all the detail, but saw my stitching and asked me if I would embroider something on their denim jacket. They had this special denim jacket called a cutoff that they wore over their
Leather
leather
jacket or whatever.
jacket. That's
Yeah,
it.
right. I know what
And
you
it,
mean.
and it had like I think they were something like Wessex or something like that, but it had this patches on it saying what gang they were in and stuff. But there was nothing across the shoulders. And they asked me if I would stitch something on their jacket, and I stitched. I think it was like a classic skeleton riding a chopper, with flames coming out of the back. I would have only been like 14, 15, something like that. And he was absolutely blown away with it.
Mm.
The next thing, going from somebody who was gay and all this kind of feedback I'd had from people, I suddenly had
Mm.
this whole bunch of really tough bikers asking me to ride on the back of their motorbikes and stitch stuff for them, and that was
That's
all on
funny.
denim. So it almost,
Yeah.
maybe it was something psychological that it was all right for me to stitch on denim, because that was
Mm.
a
Safety.
masculine thing to do, and so
Yeah.
it's very comfortable. I love the fact that lots of people say to me, "Oh, you must have really strong hands, and denim is so difficult to stitch on." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, it's really difficult. I don't find it. It's not. It's not. It's my material of choice. Like, so. No, I don't find it remotely. I prefer it because for some of the thinner cottons, I like to use a lot of pearl cotton, and I
Hmm.
like a high. You were saying about what type of stitching. It's intense. So
Mm.
I cover probably 90% of the fabric, sometimes 100% of the fabric with stitches.
Mm.
So that's easier to do with something tough like denim. If it was cotton, I'd eviscerate it. You know what I mean? It would.
Mm.
Also, like the weight. You find it weird being stuck on a lot of my stitching is on social media. So I was just saying to somebody was saying to me the other day, they only see one dimension when people go on my Facebook or my Instagram and they see my work. They're just seeing it as photographs. I try and video some of it, but really it's when people come and visit and they hold it and they go, wow, this feels great. It feels,
Mm.
there's a tension, and then you can move it around and you look into, I like hiding things. And so every time, like Bosch, or every time you look at it, you go, I didn't see that before. And I didn't see that before, but you only really get, and things like I sometimes underlay with metallics, or something, or I'll do a bit of stump work, or, to try and change the dimension of it, you know, sort of shadow shading and things like that. So it looks 3D. And then when you photograph it, looks 3D. And then people are like, oh, yeah, it must be 3D. But when then they pick it up and they look at it, they go, hold on, that's an optical illusion. And I'm like, yeah, I like that, because you're surprised by it. You go, oh, I wasn't expecting that sort of thing.
So
I've
you
rambled on
started
there, Jamie.
stitching from a. No, no, no. This is perfect. I love
Yeah.
conversations where I don't
All
have
right.
to say anything. They're the best. But so you started stitching at a young age then. Can you dial back? I mean, do you remember the first things you stitched? Were there I'm guessing it was a family influence.
Yeah.
Can you tell me the true origin story?
Origin story. Well,
Yes.
I have a very patchy memory. Just in general in life, I remember some things and completely forget other things happen. My wife has one of these like memories that she can remember a pin dropping 3 years ago. I don't function like that. But I do. A family story or law is at around 5 years old, my mum caught me trying to stitch in some. I'd taken a thread, a needle, and I think it was a tablecloth, or it might have been a curtain, and I was just trying to stitch. And she says I was 5, so at 5 I was stitching, according to her. I have memories of being very young and stitching. I don't have memories of not stitching. I don't remember pre. I've always stitched.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, it's been part of my life all my life. Now my grandmother lived with us, and she was profoundly deaf. I was the youngest of 3 boys. Putting things together and stuff, and my mum stitched. They were needle pointers mostly. They were kind of my grandmother made kneelers for church. Those things
Right.
you'd need, prayer mats, prayer kneelers,
Yeah. Yeah.
and cushions. We always had loads. I've still got loads of them. Cushions around the house, things like that. But it was all canvas work. My granny told me that she used to do fine work, and I've actually got a photograph of her from 1917 stitching. So she did do that, but by the time she lived with us, she would have been, I'm guessing, in her 80s, 70s, 80s, and her hands weren't as, remember her having very leathery, thin fingers. And I don't think she did fine work. I didn't see her do. She did teach me. I have a pen. I have a needle case just lying around that she helped me make when I was, again, young. So it had been one of
Right.
my first projects, and it was like delphiniums. And I remember her showing me how to stitch a delphinium, and then me stitching the rest of it. So
Wow.
I have that, and I have
Yeah.
some work of. Now, my grandmother said to me she remembers her mother and her grandmother stitching. So I often use that as a hook and say, well, I know I'm a fifth generation stitcher. I don't know whether it goes back beyond that, but I'm a fifth generation. On my dad's side, my dad got tuberculosis when he was younger. It's how he met my mum, who was a nurse, all that kind of thing. But part of the therapy was embroidery. He learned to embroider,
Right.
and he showed me again when I was a teenager. We were driving somewhere, um, I think probably to do with table tennis, and we stopped at Guildford Cathedral, and we went into Guildford Cathedral, and by the altar cloth he showed me a bit that he had stitched when he was in his 20s, I think.
Wow.
So he had done embroidery. He was kind of somehow separated, had a really tough upbringing, but during the war and stuff like that. And his sisters, he didn't wasn't really in contact with his sisters, my aunts. So I never knew them as a kid, but I gotten really back in touch with Marge, who was in America. And when I got in touch with her and we used to write together, she sent quilts for when my kids were born. She made these like kids quilts for them, and had always been interested in quilting. And then I think last year, through Facebook, a cousin got in touch with me, who was the daughter of one of my dad's sisters, quite estranged sisters. And we were talking. She'd seen some of my work, and she said, "Well, I remember my mum stitching crazy sort of patterns on her jeans when she was young." So, and I know she was an artist. She did paintings and
Wow.
stuff like that. So it comes, yeah, it's in her. It's really
It's in
corny.
you.
It's in the genes.
It is in the, yeah, actually, that's the strap line. It's all
Whether
in the
that's a
jeans.
J, whether that's with a J or the G, I don't know, but it's definitely in the
I'm
genes.
writing that down. I love that. That's amazing. So then, so doing some
Oh yeah,
casual
can I
mathing.
ramble on? Can I ramble
Go
on?
on,
Because you
ramble.
asked me
Yeah,
about
ramble.
example. I know this is an audio broadcast, isn't it? So, but it's hard to
Yeah.
work. But if I just, I don't know, if I just show you that, do you see this? Can you see that?
Yeah,
Yeah,
pretty
that's a
much. Yeah.
skirt. That's a skirt. And
Right.
those red stitches there with the purple there, and there's a very baggy lazy daisy. those are my first ever stitches.
Wow.
So that's
You
that
still got that.
there. That I call my memory skirt. So
Right.
that's a when I was learning to stitch, my mum got this grey skirt, and I have vague recollections. It came in a bag of clothing, like a charity bag of clothing. So I think it came from the neighbours. Of course, we're a family of 3 boys. I don't know what we were doing with a skirt. Mum gave me that and said, like, as that's your practice piece. So
Right.
whenever you want to learn a new stitch or you want to practice new stitch, rather than having lots of individual bits of, why don't you do it on the skirt? Oh, yeah, okay, sounds like. Didn't realize what a brilliant idea that was for me, anyway. So I practiced a bit, and then as I got older, some friends drew some images on it. You know, like they've signed their names. You can see loads of names on there, and then I stitched the names in. So they were like
Right.
friends would write on it. Some of them drew this. Friend of mine, she's gone now, but she drew this picture of a pair of clown shoes because she was a that's what her hobby was. She was a clown, and her name underneath, and I stitched that. Now she's gone now, but I have that on my memory skirt, and every time I see it, I think of Sue. You know, which is kind of
Yeah.
nice. I think of her, and there's
Yeah.
lots of those, and so that kind of progressed, and then it got to a stage as a in my 20s or whatever. May have been in a bottom drawer for a while, I don't know. But I have a little bit on there of, I could show you, but of the top of Glastonbury tour with 87 next door to it. Because I went to Glastonbury Festival in 1987. Now my
Hmm.
memory is shite, you know, so I could not have told you I went to Glastonbury in 1987, except for the fact it stitched on my
Apparently it
skirt.
did. Amazing.
And I went loads of years, but that I remember that year because it's stitched up. So there's loads of things. When I went to China, there's the Special Olympics. I put a thing saying World Games Shanghai, a memory of it. All my kids when they were born, they've got. I even got the when the New York won the Super Bowl because I was watching it and I just stitched it. So it's kind of now full of memories. And then when
Yeah.
I was about 40, I think it might have been, yeah, could have been 50, 50. I think it was another 50. I said, right, well, I was nearly, it was pretty full. I'm going to finish it. So I spent a couple of weeks just finishing the bits off that I wanted to do. And voila. So for 50 years, it took me to finish it. I have it hanging in my studio, and I still use it as a reference because there's so many different styles on there, and so it's a
Mm.
sampler. It's a modern sampler,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
But it's also a
it's also a
documentary.
yeah. It's everything. There's so many things to it. I love it. And my
And
one
the
of my
funny thing
kids
is,
wore it. Yeah,
I was going to say, the funny thing is, if it hadn't been a skirt, if it had been a shirt, you might have worn it. It might have got damaged along the way. So,
maybe
ironically, the
yeah.
fact that it was a skirt almost preserved its future
Made very
destiny.
well. Yeah, and also a heck of a lot easier to because it's just a plain straight. There's very little seams or tucks or whatever like that. It's not
Yeah.
sort of complex like a shirt. So it's actually very
Mm.
simple, easy thing to do. As I say, one of
I
my
love the
daughters wore
fact.
it.
I love the fact that you've got this, like you say, embroidery in your DNA from both sides of the family. Like it
Yeah,
was obviously a natural thing. It was in your fingers. Now, I was trying to do the maths, and it occurs to me you would have been going to school in the 70s. So I feel like needlework
yeah.
was still something that was kind of practiced in school at the time as well.
I think possibly not in my school because
Right,
I went to an all boys prep school and I went to an all boys secondary school up until I was about 15. Went to through a rebellion, ended up going to a mixed school.
right.
I
So
don't
you didn't
remember.
do
No,
like,
I don't
would you have
remember
done
neither
home
one.
ec and any of those sorts of things? Did you
God
do
no,
any of that kind of stuff?
no. When
Really? Right,
when I went back to sixth form, did a sixth form course, and part of the sixth form course was food and nutrition. So we
right.
learned how to, and I was vegetarian at the time, which really annoyed the teacher. But we learned how to cook and bake and stuff like
Yeah.
that. But that was a mixed school, and that was part of a sixth form like a general studies course. Now
Right. So,
I was a math head. My dad was a maths teacher, and
right.
so it was maths all the way for me up until about 15, 16, and maths and science. And then I had a major sideways turn where I ended up in music and drama,
Okay.
which didn't made led for interesting discussions with my parents. But thankfully, you see, I was the third of I was the third of three boys, and my middle brother had caused so many waves that
Right.
my little move into the arts was not was I just think they were glad I wasn't burning anything down.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Just get all
So
the wish fulfillment out on the first child. Hope for the best with the second one, third one. You just like as long as they don't damage
yeah, well, I
themselves.
mean, my eldest brother did great, very academic, university,
Right. Golden child.
and middle one total, as mentioned, the Hells Angels, and total. He's now a very good artist. Actually, he's a painter and stuff like. Academics didn't school didn't suit him, and
Right.
certainly school of the '70s really didn't suit him. And I don't think it suited me, but we were so strictly disciplined. We had the cane and all that. You didn't step out of line. And I went to a military
Mm,
school for a bit until
right.
I said, say, I'd have been about 14, 15, and I went, no, I've had enough. I've had enough. I'm not going to go. I'm not going to be. I think it was probably around the same time. I don't know whether it is actually, but teacher, leave them kids alone. Another brick in the wall. My dad was a teacher, and he absolutely hated that song. But the idea of piling you into the mincemeter, that cartoon,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
churning out the mince, and I suddenly thought, I'm heading. I wanted until this revelation. I was either wanted to be a banker, an accountant, or a hotel manager. That was my. That was my. That was my. I look back now and think, oh my! I even wore a tie out of enjoyment. I liked wearing
Right.
ties and
God.
hats, and
And then Pink
yeah,
Floyd comes along and everything
it did.
changes.
It did. I mean, I used to I was very keen on Strauss and Brahms as a kid.
Hmm.
And then I got into rock and roll. And I was all those, those American movies where they're all saying like the rock and roll, the devil's music. Well, yeah,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
was.
Yeah.
It was. But I made a good living out of it, and I can't complain. As I say, I can't remember the shining light breaking through the clouds, or what the exact instant was that changed my life, but certainly it did.
And you were stitching, so as a child or as a young man, you were just stitching for pleasure on the down low, kind of just doing it as a hobby in the same way as some people might do model making or, I
Hmm.
don't know, sports or whatever. That was your
We see,
pastime, one of many.
I did sports as well. I was massively
Yeah.
into sport. Yes, I
But
think it
did
was
did it
just
kind of,
something I did. It was just something I always did in private, because, as I say, I won't go into loads of details, but I had some very negative experiences over it, and so I did it undercover until I'd left home, and I was probably early 20s, and living. I was sharing a house with someone, with this fella, 20 years older than me. He, because we were sharing a sitting room, he saw me stitching and stuff, and said that was the most incredible thing he'd ever seen. And this guy
right?
worked as a bouncer for nightclubs. He'd been in the army, a boat builder. I don't know. Can you use the words? I would have described him in that era, that time, as a straight. He was like an absolute straight guy. And I wasn't a straight. I was kind of like weird. I'm not talking about
It's not a
sexuality
sexual thing.
straight.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
No,
yeah.
no,
This is
no.
just,
He was
yeah,
just a
right.
straight. It was a stiff, a straight,
Yeah.
a working stiff, that kind of
Hmm.
guy. Not massively well educated or experienced in life. He was a bouncer. He'd worked as he also became my absolute best mate. But he was one of those people that go, and when you haven't paid your car for your car, and you go, a repo man. He used to
Right.
go and get
So big
stuff,
boy then.
and ugly as hell. Uh, and I say, I would have been 20, he would have been in his 40s. And but a man's man, like I'm a man's man. And he saw my stuff and he
Hmm.
just said, "That's fucking amazing." So he kind of
Yeah.
encouraged me to come out of my stitching closet, my self-imposed stitching. And then people started, like those bakers, people started saying, "Wow, would you do this and would you do that?" And I remember doing a jacket for a woman. She taught me how to read, birth charts, these
Right.
astronomy,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
astrological, whatever. I was interested in it because I'm still have a lot of interest in Greek history, Greek and Roman history, and a lot of the myths tied up with Venus and with Neptune, with the gods and all that kind of thing. So I thought it'd be interesting to learn how to draw a birth chart, and she was into that. So she taught me how to create these birth charts, and I use that imagery now. And I stitched hers on the back of a jacket. So I used her birth chart and then just embroidered it on the back of a jacket. And she absolutely loved it. And consequently, people saw it. So it became a sideline. I did jackets for people, whether I got paid for them or not. Sometimes I get a meal. Sometimes we'd go to a gig or whatever. Sometimes people just, if I didn't know them very well, they'd just give me some cash. So it was a sideline. It was, yeah, hobby, but I would almost think of it as a practice. It was just something I did, like you'd clean your teeth. I just
Yeah.
stitched, and I found it very much a meditative process. It helps me it puts me in my happy zone. I love to stitch. So it's just something I'm in a position now, because the way my life is, that I can get up in the morning, come into my studio, start stitching. I do stop for cups of coffee now and again, and we have dinner sort of maybe 7 or 8 o'clock. But I can be sat here all day and every day and absolutely love it. Yeah, the finishing side of it. I was going to say, we were talking earlier about how I sometimes feel I don't see things the same way or view them from the same
Hmm.
perspective, even though I'm
Mm.
not judging anybody. But I show a lot of my work on social media. That's my kind of main thing. And I use Facebook and
Hmm.
Facebook groups and stuff. And I love getting feedback and I love getting comments. Some of them really make me laugh. But you get these ones where, like, I'm doing this quilt, 100 squares. I'm doing 100 squares, 4.5 by 3.5 inches, and they're all hand stitched. And I'm exploring different techniques and whatever, but I'm doing them very much in a flow stitch. I think one or two have been pre-designed. It was pre-designed because I did a collaboration with another artist. So I took their work and stitched it. So it's kind of pre-designed, but mostly it's not. And I post these things up. Let's say there's 100 panels. I'm up to about 80 at the moment. And I put them up, and I mention, "Oh, I'm doing this as a quilt." And people, a very common reaction is, "I can't wait till it's finished." People say, "Oh,
Mm.
please, I can't wait till this is finished. I couldn't wait till this." And I'm like, "Oh God, I'm dreading finishing it," because I really love doing it. I love doing it. And like, the idea that I'm then going to reach, I mean, originally I was going to do 80. And I thought, well, 100 sounds better. I think 80 would have been easier in some ways. But I
Is
thought,
someone
well,
going to have a word
you
with
know,
you? You're going to be like, well, 44 is like a really
yeah.
great number. And people will be like, Owen, stop now.
Stop it. So I have a massive box. I have these plastic boxes full of these, and each panel has a story attached to it. I did a stint at an art college thing, and one of the feedbacks I've got is when I was asked to display some of my work, and this is where I'm going to have to. But people would this comment of less is more. Did you know the less is?
Okay.
God,
Yeah, yeah.
man. And I haven't worked out what the opposite of a minimalist is, but I am
It's just a
whatever the opposite is.
maximalist. Yeah, yeah,
I'm a
yeah.
maximalist. So, like, if there's a spare space, I want to put something up. Oh, I want to put
Yeah,
something in, or I'll
yeah.
look at so like they curated my area for this exhibition really nicely. It was a college thing, and then the woman said, who was running it, like a fool, said, "Well, that's what I think, but you can add whatever you want." So everybody else in the class, I think, left theirs, and I just piled all my stuff out and was hanging it up. And she was like, "So you can't see everything. You can't see each individual thing now because it's just full. There's too much."
Mm,
And I'm like, "Yeah, I get that. I get that. But there's another bit thing I want to show you. There's another thing I want to
yeah.
do. There's this other bit that I want to show." So yeah, an editor or a curator is probably what I need. I've never been able to edit, as you can tell from my conversation, or curate my stuff. I don't exhibit really because it just would. But this quilt, the idea was for this quilt is to have at least an exhibition piece that I can
Mm.
stick up. I think it'd be about 16 foot long and about 4.5, 5 foot high.
Just a
Yeah,
casual 16 foot. I think sometimes
yeah.
it sounds like sometimes it's like you make symphonies. You don't make songs. You make things where there are so many pieces going on. But maybe yours are, and there's definitely like this left field thing, isn't there? Yours are like psychedelic symphonies where just everybody's playing all the instruments simultaneously, and you just have to stand there and like let it wash over you.
Cacophony, a cacophony.
Cacophony. There we go.
A
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
cacophony.
In the
I
best
have
way.
used the word. I think it's a cornucopia of embroidery.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. Like a dawn chorus at four
Like
o'clock
a
in the
dawn. Oh,
morning.
I love the dawn chorus. I absolutely love the dawn chorus. My studio here, I'm surrounded by trees. So in the morning,
Hmm.
I open the door of the studio, and I can just hear. This time of year is just superb. The bird song is amazing.
Well,
And I got one of
there's
these
an app.
apps.
Have you?
Yeah,
Go on.
I've
Which
got an
one have
app.
you got?
Is it something like bird, whatever? But you record the bird, and
Hmm.
you can tell find out what type of bird it is.
Yeah. Yeah. We use one called Merlin, and I listen out in the morning. And I'm like, oh, I listen to that bird song, and then I look, and it's like three robins really just going at it
Going at it.
because
Yeah, yeah.
they are the chorus or something.
Well,
I do
I
like
heard
that.
something recently, and I don't know it's true. My eldest brother is a bird nut. He works for the RSPCB and all that. He's big into birds.
Hmm.
But I just like looking at them. I have a bird feeder just outside, and another one stuck on the window. But I heard
Yeah.
recently that great tits mimic other birds' alarm calls. So
Uh,
they will go near a bird feeder, say an alarm, say there's a couple of greenfinches or a chaffinch, it'll do an alarm call for a chaffinch. The chaffinches all fly off, and it piles in and
right.
goes for the bird. If so, that's amazing. I love nature.
That
Yeah,
is, yeah.
mimicking
So
them.
there's this bird near us that makes a noise. It just kind of goes and it keeps doing that all the time. It's driving my wife mad. And her brother uses a different app, and somebody else has gone, "It's a great tip." But my wife's not having any of it. She refuses to believe that it's a great, even though several people have gone, "I think that's a great tip." But that might be what you're just saying there. It might be
They are.
pretending to
Great
be
tits
something
are
else.
incredibly loud. I had one the other day. Literally, I opened the door and I was looking around. I was thinking, my God, it must be because it was so loud. And
Mm,
it was like an alarm call for such a little
yeah.
bird. Yeah.
Yeah,
Anyway, don't
same
get
with
me on to
wrens as
birds,
well,
mate.
isn't it? No, no,
Oh,
no,
I
no. I
love
will reel the
wrens.
birds back. But I mean, wrens
Oh,
make a
cool.
lot of noise for.
Yeah, yeah, they do, but I think they're beautiful, beautiful singers. Which is one of the maddest ones is we have chuffs here. Do you know chuffs? They're like a crow, but they have red
Okay,
legs they're insectivores. They have a curved beak. They're pretty rare, and we get the local parks people come down and they ring them and stuff and keep an eye on them and things. But
right.
they sit on the roof of my shed out the back, and so when I take the dog. I studiously take the dog out for just a stretch, and whenever we get there, there'll always be one or two on the roof, and they shake their wings, and they're like, away, away, and so they're very unattractive noise. I love, and then in the evening, they're incredible acrobats, aerobats, whatever the
Hmm.
air equivalent is, and they go and they're flying around, dive bombing each other. Fascinating birds to watch. Yeah, I'm a
When
big
you see
nature
them,
nut.
are you chuffed to bits? Sorry. Yeah, I don't apologise for that joke at all.
You got one of them little
Tell
drum
me.
sounds.
Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think there's a website. Oh God, what's it called? I'm sure there used to be a website called like sadtrombone.com, and when you went there was a button. When you pressed it, you just went wah, wah, wah.
My
So good.
son is a sound guy, you know. He's a sound guy. But no,
It's the
that's what he
same guy.
does. He followed me sort of, well, he didn't follow me separately into music. That's his, but production and sound effects. And he's got into the world. He loves the world of doing soundscapes. Have you ever come across
Right.
soundscapes? I'd not
Mm-hmm.
come across them but like he'll do these tapes and it's as though you're walking through a spaceship.
Mm.
It did one for me, like walking through a forest, and you can hear the crunch and the birds singing, and I absolutely love all those little sound effects. So sometimes when he comes down here with he's got a fluffy directional mic, and
Mm.
he's building up like a library. I think it's going to be for like an academic for a university like sound library, so people
Mm.
who are in drama groups or doing audio visual or whatever like that can access all these different sounds.
Mm.
He was recording the chuffs for that I think for that purpose. So because they say they're not that common. We get
Yeah, yeah.
ravens going across the top as well. These cawing of ravens when they fly over. I love that. Sounds very important.
Tell me about the Great Poobah.
The Grand Poobah, the Great Poobah.
Sorry.
Um,
Yes.
yeah, no, officially, you see, I got asked by, um, I came across, I say, I'm in all these stitching groups, and I came across this woman, Anne Bowden, from, uh, she's from America, California-ish kind of area, I think. And she set up this Facebook group, World Peace, One World, One Stitch at a Time. And it's one of these projects asking people to contribute. So I thought that was great. And I stitched, she wanted some leaves and she wanted a piece stitched in different languages. So I sent her one in Irish and I just got involved. And I like that kind of bringing people together. And
Mm.
I know there are lots of different projects, but it just stood out for me. She seemed such a lovely go-getting lady. And she asked me at one stage, because at some when it's the project is complete, she would like it to tour around and she said, you know, I'm in Ireland. Would I help out, sort of thing? And I was like, I don't know a lot about that side of things, but I'd certainly contribute. And she said, would you be, because I'm very active social media wise, would you be a an ambassador? And I thought, oh, an ambassador. Well, that sounds rather good. I like that. I like that. And I was thinking like little pyramids of Ferrero Rocher and all this kind of thing. And so I said, yeah, sure, I do it. And then she wrote me this lovely email confirming me as a stitching buddy. And I went, hold on, stitching buddy? Stitching buddy is a whole different concept to ambassador. Ambassador, I was thinking of a sash and maybe a tricorn hat and even a sword, you know. But stitching buddy, that sounds more like faded jeans and flip
You'd
flops
be
and a
lucky to get a
t-shirt.
Fry's Turkish Delight out of a
Yeah,
stitching buddy, wouldn't you?
yeah. So I said to her, look, yeah, I'll do, but no, you promised me a different title. And I do these posts, and I may have talked about it in one of my posts, saying I was disappointed that I'd gone from ambassador to stitching buddy, and lots of people piled in with some different comments. And I think Anne, I did have a word with Anne that look, this is just for fun. You know, I wasn't actually offended. I was just teasing, and she got into the conversation, into the thread or whatever it is, and said, "Well, how terribly sorry she was, and you know, and how about we settled with Poobah, a grand Poobah?" And I thought, mate, she may not have said grand Poobah or great Poobah, but I heard great Poobah or grand Poobah, and so I'm now the grand Poobah. Now I consequently quite a lot of my work I get involved in I have different personalities, different facets of the same diamond, of the same gem. um
Yes.
so I kind of threw myself into the Grand Poobah and I stitched myself a cowl with peace written on it. And I
Hmm.
had a hat. I made a hat for it. And I made the love glove. And I
I was going
love
to
the
say
love
about the
glove.
glove, right?
Oh, the love glove. So I made the love glove. And at the same time, it's just different elements. At the same time, there was quite a heated conversation about AI technology and stuff coming into craft. And it was just coming into craft at the time and somebody had posted this thing. AI abomination in one of my hand stitching groups. And I pointed out that it was an AI, and people were saying, "What's AI?" and blah blah. And so I ended up stitching this glove, and then to keep it real, because the embroidery they'd shown was like of a skeleton, of bones and stuff like that, of an arm, I think it was. So I thought, well, I'm going to do this glove, and I'm going to do it in a kind of that kind of style, sort of AI-ish style with some bones in it, and I don't know, just whatever. And on the middle finger, the bird finger, I stitched real. On the knuckles, I had love, LOVE, and on the thumb, I had G, so it was glove. So it was the love
Hmm.
glove, and real was stitched on the middle finger. So if you gave someone the bird, I think that's what they euphemistically
Yeah,
call
yeah,
it.
yeah.
It says real. So I was trying to keep it real. Those are the grandpa
Nice.
Poobahs. So I did a little video, and of course during that video, I displayed the properties of the glove and extended the finger. But at the same time, I'd also written a post promoting the World Peace, One World, One Stitch at a Time project. So the two didn't really. So I re-edited it and took the finger out. So I didn't keep it real, which was a little disappointing. I was upset for a couple of weeks. But yeah. So I suppose one thing led to another, as
Hmm.
in as in all good things,
Yes. Which then naturally
That's
follows
the
on
Poobah.
to yeah, yeah, yeah. And so now it brings us to Seamus O'Cumensy.
Well, Seamus is a wee man, so I think he is about 8 inches tall, and he is hand stitched in West Cork. He is a West Cork man, and he has a red hat, and he has rainbow embroidered trousers and this amazing like 70s shirt and a little blue waistcoat. And he came about because I woke up one morning and I said, "Oh, I've got this amazing idea," and turned to the missus and says, "I've got an amazing idea," and got the usual "Oh my God" response. What is it now? And I explained the concept. So the concept at the time was I've developed this disability. My movement is massively restricted. I love traveling, or used to love traveling all over the world. And I got lots of invites from people saying, would I come and see this? They're doing this. Would I come and see that? Within music, within embroidery, I've got an exhibition, or would you like to come and stay, or just very hospitable people. And I was always having to say in the last couple of years, this was just about pre-pandemic, I'm sorry, I can't, because I can't travel. And it was a little frustrating. So I thought what I might do is if I stitch this doll, he doesn't like doll, puppet. If I
Hmm.
stitch this puppet and send him in my stead, and then people
Hmm.
could take photographs of him and send the photographs to me, and I could see the world through Seamus's eyes. And I was kind of
Hmm.
going to do this on my Facebook page, and I did it for a little while, a couple of visits, and realized that actually this is taking up a whole huge space of my Facebook, losing continuity. So he now has his own Facebook page. So I keep everything over with Seamus. And he's
I'll
been
make sure
going
we put
over a
that in the
year.
show notes.
Please do. Yeah, well, I mean, it's a small thing. It's for fun. I don't expect.
Mm.
It's not like a roll up, roll up. This is a commercial, blah de blah project. It's not. It's just a bit of a laugh. And I think I've got about 750 followers who come along for the ride.
And what
But
does he
it's
play? Is it a mandolin or is it a shillelagh or is
oh,
it
he's got a little. He didn't take that. That was when he was busking in Bantry, and he picked up those
a?
couple of girls. Yeah, that was a whole saga. Yeah, and Lolita came out of that actually. His girlfriend's been doing some
Okay,
modelling. I've got I've got.
right.
She's just here. And she set up her own band actually. She's doing some great stuff. He's yeah. So the concept is what he's done is he goes and visits people. They take photographs. I put up the photographs. Seamus kind of says what's going on, which is instructed, I presume, by the people that are hosting him. So he's almost a bit like I described it one time and felt that was a good description of like one of those tribal sticks talking sticks.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the talking
Yeah.
sticks where you pass it to
Yeah.
someone. So he's passed on to someone and they can have a conversation. So recently he was in Portugal and he went to stay with a Leas, can't remember her surname, but she does Relvas, Elias Relvas, and she makes these voodoo dolls. You know, these they're like
Okay.
little voodoo dolls, and puts things like anxiety, and they're like fridge maggots, and you can stick pins in them. And I
Uh-huh.
got one with patriarchy I got from my daughter. There's some with Trump on that really wind people up, but get some great comments. But he went to stay with her and meet the dolls and
Mm-hmm.
get a little course of acupuncture while he was there. But she showed him round Lisbon, and brilliant. I think I'd been to Lisbon, but I hadn't seen half that stuff, you know. And she took him to art galleries. He ended up having his photo taken, a meeting. Can't remember her name, but she was the Portuguese entry for the Eurovision Song Contest last
Of
last
course.
year. Just met her in a pub doing a video. He went axe throwing. When he was in New Zealand, he did bungee jumping.
Right.
Marika van Velken, I think it is, makes these incredible jackets, embroidered jackets. I'll send you a name because they're just fabulous jackets she does. I think she's pretty well known. But he went to Holland and she was away doing an exhibition, but she arranged for him to have a little tour of all these different fabric artists in Holland. And then he ended up going to the European quilting exhibition and he took a and so you like I say she took him round. What she's doing is she takes him round, takes photographs of him, but with all the different quilts and meeting different people. And
So if other people want him to come and visit them, like they can just
yeah, they
DM.
put there's a page on. I pinned it to the top of his Facebook page. I don't know whether everyone. When I first did it, lots of people. It's divided into Europe, Northern America,
Mm-hmm.
Australia. And people, yeah, they put their name up or they DM him and just say, "All right, we'd be interested." I mean, he's got a lot of people to visit.
Right.
He was with Zdenka at the moment in Slovakia, and he's right on the border of Ukraine and Hungary. And he spent Easter with them and discovered this. I'd never heard of this, but a Slovakian tradition where all the women get covered with water at Easter and
Okay.
beaten with willow sticks with ribbons on them. Sounds barbaric to me, but it's a cultural thing. So we experienced that and went to an egg museum, in a decorated egg museum. So yeah, he goes all over the place. The feedback I've had from some of his hosts, I remember this woman. He went into a special needs school and had an amazingly positive experience. He seems to be able to connect, or people could connect with this image, with this
Mm-hmm.
toy, with this
Mm-hmm.
character in a way that you probably couldn't connect with a human being.
Mm-hmm.
I don't people let their guard down or something, but he's just very easy. You can stick him in his pocket and take him with you on your walk. And people have said to me that it's been great. It's like having a visitor. The Dagmar from Czechia, she said to me that she'd met these. She got met. People would see her with this thing and would come up to her and go, "What's that?" And she ended up meeting people and having exchanges with people, and they were like, "Oh yeah, it's just this mad thing from Ireland, this mad fellow from Ireland." So I like to think there's humour, but it's also the idea really is in some ways is also promoting the community of stitching.
Mm-hmm.
So there's always an opportunity. What I like is if you visit somebody who's creative in any way. He went visited musicians. He's visit anybody, a cook, a chef, somebody who is creative, and they get to show their creativity through Seamus to a bunch of people who are interested in seeing different cultures and from different kind of nothing. It's nothing major, but a little bit of an antidote to normal social media. Something's
Yeah.
just for a bit of fun. Yeah, I mean, someone could throw some politics in there if they want, and then next week he's going to be in Australia. Next week he's going to be
Yeah.
somewhere else.
It's a lovely way of reinforcing, like you say, the global community of needleworkers. And it was making me think of when I chatted with Sally Maver about the vignettes that she makes. And because a lot of her characters are dolls, they have this inherent innocence that people
Ah,
respond well to. They don't get very cynical about it. And so it sort of brings out
yes.
that like joy to be found in the same way as, I guess, if you like children and you see a 4-year-old, you kind of want to show them the nice world, don't you? You kind of want to show them the best of it.
Yes. I think that's a very astute observation. I think it does people there is an innocence, and it allows you to be a little childlike. I mean,
Mm,
there was
yeah.
wonderful this woman in I think it was in Waterford or Wexford, and she sent me a photograph of her, and she had dressed as Seamus as well. I don't know if it was even intentional, but she had a red hat on. She looked like she was dressed up with Seamus, you know. And she again said she took him. I think she took him to this bookshop, and the next thing is I get a whole series of photographs of the owner of the bookshop with the with talking to Seamus and showing him the latest books in the red
Yeah,
bookshop,
right.
and some things you just, and other people like some, and it's weird, everybody seems to respond differently. So I thought initially I'd get at least I asked for a minimum of a photo a day, and with
Right.
maybe just a few words to tell me where it is or what it context. And then Seamus will make up stories, he can do. Or if they want to write the story, they can write the story. If they're
Hmm.
going to write the story, you need to write it in in the first person rather than
Hmm.
we did this with but I've had people making videos with him. I've had people, he was part of a puppet show, in somewhere in Southbourne, I think, in on and he was on a podcast. He was been on the radio. He went
A
on
podcast.
do you know Stitchery Stories, Susan Weeks?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And he went to her place and was an
Did a
assistant.
3-hour episode with
No, he was just assisting her with the editing and stuff like that.
her.
But she showed me all this yarn bombing around Hornsea that she is at.
Right.
But like he went to see the red dress, the red dress.
Hmm.
Yeah, he
Hmm.
went to see the longest yarn, that one with all the crochet of the Second World War.
Mm.
So he's got to places that I would have never, I would have, I'm not
He's
able
doing
to
a,
get to. And
yeah, right.
I miss that. I mean, I love being here, and in my little bubble and stuff. But I live literally in the middle. Well, no, I live on you've got to go through nowhere to get to to get to me. So I'm on the furthest edge. So I don't interact with people a lot. So consequently, I talk too much when people do talk. But I socialize through predominantly my Facebook, but also through my Instagram and my Blue Sky, and I get to meet as a virtual meet. Here, look, here's you
Hmm.
and me
Hmm.
talking away on a soggy Friday afternoon here. So yeah, yeah.
Let's go and dive into the other questions. I feel like that's a good turning point. I do love the fact that Seamus is living the life that we all wish we could live. He's doing well. I love that he's on
Yeah.
a podcast. That's so funny.
He's literally. I think his next stop is in Australia with Jake Arnett, and who is Stitchman,
Right.
but who makes little dolls himself. So I'm really excited about
Is he a good
seeing
house
that one.
guest, or does he tend to does he
I've
like
been
keep you
told
up
he
late at night
snores.
telling stories? He's not.
I've been told he snores, and he has got soaked on more than one occasion. He might have a little bit of a drinking problem because he's very absorbent. So he has ended up in a few people's pints. I know Paddy's Day, not this year, last year, Paddy's Day. I got a photograph of him lying on his back, knocking back a pint of Guinness. So he can be mischievous, but it's generally meant to be in good humour.
A grin
But he
on
has
his
got
face,
a
twinkle in his eye.
trouble. Yeah, definitely a twinkle in his eye.
Right. Okay. So we've already talked about the significance of Pink Floyd in your life. I feel like the question of do you have a favorite band is unanswerable, but we'll give it a whirl. Tell me about your music.
Yeah, well, music is a massive part, or has been, still is a massive part of my life. I worked in the music industry off and on for maybe 20 years on the A&R side of things, on the scouting side of things. So a lot of my friends
Hmm.
are musicians and stuff. So music was a major. So it's like periods, like favorite albums, favorite whatever. You know what my favorite was when I was 15 was it's still one of my favorites because
Hmm.
it'll never leave me. So what's my
Yeah.
favorite now is, but I was thinking about it because I knew this you were going to ask this, and I think it's a really interesting question. So I've settled on an album. Yeah.
Okay.
I wanted some honorable mentions, which was
Go for
quite
it.
kind of difficult, and they're more about. I'm very interested in this in everything. I like a social connection.
Hmm.
So I am attracted, knowing musicians, I often am attracted to their music because there's a person when a singer sits down in your front room and sings you a song,
Hmm.
there is a connection that their newest song, maybe they haven't played it to anyone before and they want you to hear it. I feel that is incredibly feel incredibly honored.
Mm.
And it is a real human contact of being there, being in the moment.
Hmm.
So I might hear something on the radio or whatever and go, oh, I like that. But there is a personal connection. So I worked with this band. They didn't sign to our label or whatever like that, but I sort of A&R development and got to know this band. A guy is called the Picture House. Do you ever hear the Picture House?
No,
Probably
no.
not. No. In Ireland, they would have been pretty well known back in the 1990s. Now, I first came across them because they sent me a demo. So I listened to the demo and I absolutely loved the demo. Quite rocky, quite sort of slightly indie, but a bit of brassy rock. Yeah. And I thought, young lads, really interesting. So I went and saw them and developed a relationship with them. And then they got signed by another label and developed by another band, and they went into a different cycle. And the lead singer Dave, they got a new drummer. I think they changed the guitarist. Nick went, and they got this guy Duncan came in, and Duncan was from another band uh, that a friend of mine had been working with, the Flood, and they came together as and brought Dave. I think is one of the most fabulous voices in the Peter Gabriel kind of sphere, you know. And but his musical influence. He's a big fan of Billy Joel, and it slightly on the poppy side of things for me, but like.
Hmm.
And then Duncan came in, who was into John Lennon and hits of bands of the '60s, the Pink Floyd and more my kind of thing. He was from Sheffield, I believe, and he came in, and the two of them combined together. And there was also a guy, Pete Glenister, who was the producer, who also had a lot of input. And they produced albums. I think it was on London. There was a whole saga. They toured with Meatloaf. They opened for Meatloaf. I remember going to see them. They opened for Runrig. Do you know Runrig in
I've
Scotland?
heard of
No.
them. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I'm trying to think of the one big American rock band they toured with, but they were the kind of band a bit like Hawkwind or a bit niche. They had their following, they had a massive following, but they never really hit the commercial. They produced records, but they never got the major record company backing. They set up their own label, and in 1996 they produced an album called Shinebox. So that I'd put that as my because as an album. So there's lots of individual songs on there. Fear of Flying, I almost have that as a mantra in my head sometimes. Fear of
Hmm.
flying, experiencing the fear, but then you do fly, you'd have to
Hmm.
listen to it. But I liked it. I'm very much more into ethnic music and stuff, but that was the most commercial kind of album I thought. So if I was to nail it down,
Hmm.
because of the personal connection, because I love the people.
Hmm.
And to throw into that, there is another person in my life called Big John Willie. I have a few of them, who is a kind of grand poobah. He's a bit like Super Dad Farty Pants. He's a bit more real than Seamus,
Okay.
but he plays music pretty
Right.
badly. I've posted some of his banjo solos online before now. He has his own Facebook page. And he, as a project, has been producing this album for a while, let's say. The producer is my son, who goes under the name, doesn't now, but used to go under the name of Jiminy Junk, J Junk. He's on Spotify and stuff like that. He's a kind of more of a hip hop sound artist kind of guy, but he agreed to do the production, and he was very good value for money. And because of my mobility issues, the songs are all written, but and have been for years. But because of my mobility, I'm not really in a position to go into a studio and do recordings with him and stuff like that. So what has happened is my son got the vocal down for me, and then that went out to different. So that's gone out, and now Johnny Boyle has done the drumming. Johnny Boyle used to be he drums with the Frames. They're an Irish band. I don't know if you come across the Frames. But he, when he played with Marion Faithfull, and he's actually a professor of drumming at the at BIM in Dublin.
Wow. Okay.
He's a drumming whore. He'll go for it. Anybody pay him, he'll go, and he's brilliant. And then another friend of mine, he got together with a friend of mine, Angus Ralston, who is now the bass player for the Waterboys. You know the Waterboys?
Okay. Yeah.
And they put the drum and bass down. And Angus used to be in the Pitch House. Johnny bumped drums for the Pitch House. I also, once that was done, I also sent one of the copies to Jeff Woods, who is now a music teacher in a school, but he used to be the keyboardist for the Pitch House. He's put some keys down on it. I've got friends, a friend of mine, Matt Moore, his son, is going to put some trad down for me. One of my daughters is an opera singer. She said she'll do some vocals. I have another daughter who is a concertina player. So all in all, this is not being released yet. Only a couple of tracks, Mushroom Moon, I think. But this is Big John Willie's Greatest Shits album. And at some stage we hope to, and I stitched a hat for him. I don't know if I sent you a thing, but have you come across this hat?
Okay.
That's Big John Willie's hat. So when
no, you have sent me a picture of that, right?
I stitched that for him, and it's got all the elements going around it. So
presumably the album cover will be embroidered as well.
That's what I'm hoping. Yeah, absolutely. And the t-shirts. And I've actually, you see the fabric of this hat I'm wearing here. This is one taken from my embroidery. And I did a sweatshirt as well. I've been doing these multiple tiling the patterns and making fabric out of them. And this is from the Quilt project. So one project links to another project, links to another project, links to another project.
Like a cacophony.
Like a cacophony, yeah, a cornucopia. I wanted to shout out a girl called Ellen O'Mara, who's an Irish singer I came across, an Irish folk singer. Again, not anywhere. You'd find her on Spotify, you'd find her on SoundCloud, Bandcamp, that kind of thing. But I absolutely adore her voice. I don't go and see concerts anymore. Before I used to see 4 or 5 concerts a week. I went to a gig in Connolly's of Lepp, maybe 2 or 3 months ago, because I'd heard this. Someone had sent me this, and I think she's got the voice of an angel. I absolutely adore her lyrics. It's almost like being over dramatic, maybe, but she's like a Bob Dylan of her day. I just think she says that she thinks her work is she's worried that it's depressing because it deals with issues of political issues, not being able to find places to live, eating disorders, but I love listening to it. And I don't hear any of that. I hear hope. I hear lyricism. I hear poetry, and dealing with such difficult issues in such a beautiful way. So I'm a big fan of her. And as I say, she's nowhere. She's not. She did a beautiful song about Palestine. Yeah. So and that. And my latest music is I'm going to see. I booked in end of May. Really excited. Is Hun Hur Tu. Hun Hur Tu. HUNHURTU. 3 words.
Okay.
And they are like Mongolian throat singing.
Okay. Yeah, right.
And I absolutely there's a band called The Who, HU, I don't know if you know them, but they are like Mongolian throat singing, that kind of area. It might not be specifically Mongolia. I think it is with the Who, but they combine that with like heavy rock. And it's just like I find it mind blowing. I love that Oriental string sound mixed with rock, mixed with that vibration of those voices, like Tibetan chanting or whatever. But does something
You'd hope that the
gets me,
Who and the
gets
Who
me.
would get together at some point. That feels
You
like
would. That's why I'm always. I don't know. I've never. Is it the Who or the Who? I don't know. I've not. But it's HU. That's the heavy rock version of it. But I love all
when
that
you're
ethnic stuff.
when when you're A&Ring, is
Yeah.
it like people send you demos and you listen out and I don't know, like magic when you hear it? Is that kind of how it works? Just listen and listen and listen to songs, and then every now and again, like say when I've judged
Yeah.
a needlework prize, you can look at a lot of things, but magic when you see it.
Yeah, it's really difficult because it's very much tuning in. Well, it used to be. You see, now I've got friends who are now telling me that ANI is a completely different world. It's all done now online. It's all done through apps that track views. So
Right.
there's no record companies are not going to be interested unless you're getting like 100,000 downloads. It's not.
Mm-hmm.
There's no development. There's no. It's a completely different world. So
Mm.
so back in my day,
Mm-hmm.
I was more of an A&R scout, so
Right.
a job's worth body really. So I had contacts in the UK, and I worked for a while with like a sub label Compulsion that was on Chrysalis before they were
Mm-hmm.
sold and stuff. So the boss of that, Chris Briggs, would say, "Would you go?" He just wanted me to check out what was going on in Ireland. At that time there was a lot going on. There'd been, you had the U2s and this kind of thing, and so he wanted to keep abreast of what was going on. So I would listen, get people to send me demos. I'd listen to hundreds of demos, so he didn't have to listen to them, and
Mm-hmm.
I'd pick out the ones I thought he would like. So I'd pick,
Right.
and not too many, because was a busy man. So like he had he was a guy that signed and developed Deacon Blue, so he had a kind of a feel in that, whatever. He liked the Picture House, but we got outbid by London. Um, so, but then I would go and see a band like, he would have hated the Cranberries. So I'd go and see the Cranberries, and then my trigger, I go, well, Chris is not going to like this, but I know somebody who
Mm-hmm.
would. So I then
Right.
say to Chris, do you mind if I send this on to somebody else? And he'd
Mm-hmm.
be like, no, no. So my first line of duty was to the company. But then if they passed, I was pretty much free to tout to anybody else. So
Right.
I would know people who were more I mean, we had again, these are bands you probably, Songs of Ping. Yeah,
Oh,
Songs of
yeah.
Ping. Yeah.
Dancing
The
at the
song,
disco, bumper
well,
to bumper.
bumper to bumper. There, where's me jumper? Well, they were a kind of an indie stroke punk band sort of thing.
Yeah.
But like, I actually ended up unofficially putting together, bringing certain parties together, and they ended up signing to Rhythm King, but Rhythm King were a kind of like a dance label. But Rhythm wanted to branch out. They wanted something that was credible, that was fun, that had commercial saleability. So I like the Salsa Ping. I didn't necessarily think that Rhythm King would be a good fit, but they were sniffing about and they showed interest well before. But I just supported both parties. So like when the band
Yeah.
said to me, "Who the hell are these people?" I mean, "Oh no, they're all right. They're all right. That's I know it's an odd way of doing it, blah blah blah. But they had a couple of good hits, and I thought they were a great band, And they weren't
Yeah.
really. I'm not sure because I'm not involved in management or anything. I don't know whether they would have got signed by EMI or Sonic. They weren't. They were more of an indie band,
Mm,
and they were
mm,
working and living out of Cork rather than London.
right.
So yeah, no, I would have thousands of stories about about interactions with music and different bands. And a huge privilege because there was really no other A&R men. I just fell into it over here because I've been involved in music in the UK, moved to Ireland to tune in, turn on, drop out, and then I just started getting phone calls. Would you go see this? Would you go see that? Would you do me a favor? And I thought, well, I might as well go and see a few bands and get paid to do it at the same time. So,
So
but there wasn't really anyone else.
when I
Yeah.
launch my second podcast, Record Player Needle Exchange, that's when we can go down, go down that route.
Go down that route. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite book?
Well, I thought that was interesting, a question as well, because again, different periods. I don't read anymore.
Right.
I listen to audiobooks,
Mm-hmm.
but I've pretty much given up reading because I spend most of my time stitching. So,
Yeah.
but I love audiobooks,
Do you listen to those while you're stitching,
on
or
occasion,
do you just
yeah,
tend
and
to listen to music
podcasts.
more? Right.
It depends. Again, you go down that whole thing. I can get very easily influenced by what I am, my environment.
Mm-hmm.
So I do those quilt panels, and I would often, before I do a quilt panel, they only take me a day, 2 days to do, 3 days sometimes, and I would explore a genre of music. So I would put on what I did one the other day. There's an artist called Mike Love, who is not the Beach Boys guy. Mike Love, he is a white Rastafarian from Hawaii, and
Okay.
absolutely adore. He does a lot of loop pedal stuff, Permanent Holiday. I think he is absolutely amazing. He would have possibly been, he would be a choice as my favorite thing if we had more than one choice. Now, I literally I put him on shuffle, on Spotify.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not surprising. I can see the influence of the red, yellow, and green in the stitchwork. I think there
Mm-hmm.
are a few hemp leaves tucked away there, designs, quite a bit of herringbone. So I see that. There's another band called Seed, who's a German big brass, kind of reggae-ish, but it's more brassy. What do they call dancehall sort of stuff,
Mm-hmm.
with a bit of rap, very sort of urban, very brassy. So if I put that on, I will get a different patch. I will get it. It
Yeah.
will influence what I stitch because I'm drawing on whatever is in my environment in wherever I am at the moment. So music has a massive impact. I will
Yeah.
sometimes to influence. If you see some of my patches and there's a Chinese influence, there's very strong possibility I was listening to some Chinese music at the time.
Yeah.
I did a South American influenced one, and I was listening to all this amazing Bolivian guitar music while I was doing it. Puts me in the mood, puts me in the zone. But sometimes I'll on a bigger piece, like a jacket or something, I won't because I'll be at it for 3 weeks, 4 weeks. So I listen to podcasts and a lot of history, a lot of culture.
Can you just bear with me 1 second? Super awkward.
Yes, you can,
I
man.
just want to see if
Yeah,
there's
no,
someone
no.
at the door. Sorry, Aaron, bear with me.
Sure, I heard the dog. Yeah, no worries.
No idea what that was. No idea. Let me just make it of that. So yeah, so then do you have a favorite book?
Yeah, book. Well, yes, in the sense of the Book of Kells. Do you know the Book of Kells?
No, come on.
The Book of Kells. It's a medieval illuminated manuscript that's housed in Trinity College in Dublin. I think it's sort of 13th century, that kind of thing. The illuminated text, and
Mm,
absolutely mostly scriptures. I think it's in Latin, but all the designs are of the illuminated script. The little animals, the trilliums, the different designs, Celtic knotwork, a lot of Celtic
mm,
knotwork designs and stuff like that. So it is for me a visual feast. I have
yeah,
a whatever they call those copies, a facsimile. So visually and individually, there is only one Book of Kells. Do you know what I mean? It's handmade, it's handwritten, big, it's heavy, it's bound in leather, and beautifully illustrated. So,
mm.
favorite book, that particular book, though I presume the question was more about a book as in a published
No,
storybook
I
or a book.
mean
All right.
it
No, no,
doesn't sort of have to be. That's
no.
an easy win, that one.
Yeah. One of my favorite books is the Mabinogion. The
Love this. I love
story of
half of the things you've mentioned that then I have to write down phonetically. Now, go on.
Mabinogion, the Mabinogion, which
Okay.
is it's like the Book of Talisman. It's he's a bard. He's like a druidic bard and a soothsayer and storyteller. So a lot of the wealth mythologies and of stories of the gods, like over here we have the Denim and the stories of the Fae and of the the people before, people like
Mm.
Breed and the gods and the goddesses and that kind of thing.
Earth
I
magic
love
and
that
stuff.
ancient. Yeah, I love that. It's our ancestral culture. So it's like I go to somewhere. I love being would be a real hippie, but feeling the energy at the stones. There's a wedged
Mm.
tomb here, and of course you've got Newgrange up the country, and the Hill of Tara, and places, and I feel a connection, an ancestral connection. That's kind of like
Mm-hmm.
why I like all the traditional folk, like even from Persia or from North Africa, or I know people talk about cultural appropriation, and maybe I'm doing that, but I think we're all one culture, we're all one humanity, and we're at a position where we jazz came out of two traditions. I like the morphing and the changing, and we are evolving. I think it's important to acknowledge individual cultures, but I think we can also draw and then to the benefit of our artistic and our creative endeavors.
Yeah.
Not to get too deep.
Nice. No, no, no. Love that. Love that. Love that. Do you have a favorite film? That you probably haven't got any
I'm
time.
not
Spend
so
too much
big.
time
I'm not so
stitching.
big.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really a big film watcher these days. I used to watch films, certainly when I was younger. Or also, author-wise, I wanted to mention Terry Pratchett. You said about books.
Shout out to Terry
Adore,
Pratchett.
I adore Terry Pratchett and that
Mm.
Neil Gaiman, Good Omens. Love that sort of stuff. And his brain was amazing.
Mm.
Got to meet him once.
Okay.
Phil.
Seamus has met him 5 times. Except
Yeah,
obviously
no,
not. But
unfortunately, he was long gone before Seamus left.
shame.
Um, the most significant, if I rather than mention the most significant film for me was probably the Blues Brothers.
Okay.
You know,
Love
Dan
the Blues
Aykroyd. Dan.
Brothers.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I think that to me, love. I've had so many amazing experiences of that. I remember once going to see a midnight showing of it in a cinema in Bournemouth after the nightclubs had closed or something, or they had a scheme that they did a few of them. They did the Rocky Horror Show and a couple of others, but they did the Blues Brothers. And me and that friend of mine I was telling you, Jim, the older fellow that lived with me,
Mm.
we dressed up as Jake and Elwood, but we were both pretty much Jake because neither of us we both liked our food. But we had the glasses and the black hats, and that we had a little dance routine we did. So I loved that, and I loved the music of it. And it's a film I've been able to
Yeah.
watch over and over again because I love all the music. I
Mm.
wouldn't normally watch films more than once, so I think that, and before that was to be probably the most cinematic impression I ever had was going to see Grease when I was a kind of
Okay.
teenager when it first came out. And I think that was the first and only time I've ever gone to see a film on subsequent days. I think I went and saw it 3 times on one day, then the next day, then and I knew all the lyrics. It really made a massive impact. Possibly because I'd spent most of my life at boarding school. Films were not, you know, I would not be a filmy
Mm.
person. I'm not
Mm.
really modern films. I wrote down a few others I loved. High Society.
Right.
High Society.
Woody Allen.
No, Fred Astaire, Frank
Okay. Sorry. Right.
Sinatra,
Right.
Louis
Right. Right.
Young.
Right. Right.
Who
Right.
wants to be a millionaire? I do,
Mm-hmm.
and all that one. Musical. Grace Kelly, I think, was in that. So I loved that. All the Bud Abbott, Lou Costello movies, and Bob Hope, and Bing Crosby. Loved all those.
Mm-hmm.
But they're ones that have kind of stuck with me. But they are old movies. But I loved all
So I've
that.
got.
Didn't you have on Saturday? Was it Saturday matinee or whatever? When I was a kid, the TV. So either on Sunday afternoon, just after lunch, or there was a black and white movie on my TV
Mm,
on one day. And I love dancing and music. So I think anything with Fred Astaire was a genius.
yeah. I feel like it's weird. I feel like I've missed the trick. For some reason, I've always been a bit black and white movie averse for no particular
Mm.
reason other than maybe they just felt outdated. But, when you think about all the bells and whistles people have got from making films now, the black and white films knocked the ball out of the park because it was about acting. That's pretty much all
Yeah.
they had to rely on, wasn't it? Yeah. There's a lot. I
I
think need
loved
to
in
again
those days.
revisit them.
I loved the music. I've always loved dancing, and I think Fred Astaire was just moved. Like I just loved watching the way he moved. And probably
Mm.
Bob Hope and Big Crosby, maybe not the modern,
Charismatic, though.
but no, when being bum, 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 loved his voice, loved that, and Bob Hope just made me laugh. He's just
Yeah, yeah.
such a funny guy.
Now, I'm a bit nervous asking this next question,
Hmm.
but it is the question I always ask. So, is there a fact about Owen Kelly that not a lot of people know? Brace yourselves, everybody.
Well, it depends on what world we're talking about, you know, because within my stitching world, I don't know whether people know that I was an international table tennis coach.
Well,
There's a
so that's interesting. Just for a second there, because back in the conversation earlier, you said about table tennis, and I wrote it down. So yeah, let's do table tennis.
right.
Great.
Well, the table tennis was a massive part of my life. I still am, even though I can't physically coach now. I'm a level 3 coach. I'd be like an international coach. I was head coach for the Irish team for the World Special Olympic Games. My son was number 1 in Ireland. One of my daughters was number 1 under 21 in Ireland. Yeah, I'm up to my gills. I was chairperson of the West Cork Table Tennis Association that I founded in 1987. I've coached
So
all
did you
over the
get into
world.
that when you were a young person then?
My father was, I say, he became a teacher, and when he was young, he got involved in table tennis, and he knew people like again. This is a world I wouldn't expect, but he knew people like Johnny Leach, people who were way Victor Barner, people back in the 50s who would be big names in table tennis, but probably not outside of table tennis. And when he became a teacher, he was encouraged to have at that time. Teacher was encouraged to have another string to their bow, like an after school thing. So he went back to doing table tennis, and he kind of got me involved, and I would have been maybe about 6 or 7 years old.
Mm.
And so I traveled all over the country playing in table tennis tournaments, played for the English schools at one stage. I was asked whether I was going to try out for Wales or for England. I had the opportunity for both. Ended up with going with England, so I only played once or twice. At that time, if I played for Wales, I'd probably have had a longer career as a junior. So yeah, no, I played at I'd say a significant level as a junior table tennis player, but more to the point was my coaching. I think that was where I wrote the Irish syllabus, educational syllabus, level 1s and level 2s. Yeah, up to my gills running. At one stage, I added up that I had coached over 5,000 kids in West Cork. Yeah, I set up a club in the village. We had 12 tables at one stage, and we even had a former Chinese Olympic coach come over. So yeah,
Do you
and
know?
for a tiny little village like where I live, that was quite I think is quite impressive.
Yeah. Is it? I mean, do you know you're good at table tennis when you're like standing 2 feet away from the table and still playing? That seems to be what makes a difference anytime I watch it online, is just they're nowhere near the table. I have no
Yeah,
nothing,
you
I should
don't
say at
need
this
to be. I
point.
mean, one of the advantages of being stepping back from the table is that you get more time. So I think it was worked out. If table tennis table like 9 foot long, 9 foot space between you, and you're hitting the ball at, near on just under 100 miles an hour, you've got like 0.06 of a second to react, which is quicker than blinking. You just blinked, so it was quicker than that. So, as an advantage to stepping back is that you have a little bit more time. I think most of your responses are instinctive, the automative. So you train and train and train and train and train and train and train, and then you reproduce in it at the event. So you don't really, because I say about that much time, but you've also got to think what is on the ball, what direction is the ball going, what kind of spin is there, what's the speed of the ball, and where are you going to put it for the most of the optimum result. So you have to have an incredibly fast processing speed of your brain, or you are pre-programmed and you just respond. But if you respond the same way as every time, then your opponent's going to work out very quickly tactically how to beat you. So
So it
stepping
sounds
back
to
gives you a
me,
little bit more time,
right?
but it
It
opens
sounds to
up the
me
angle of the
like,
table.
right. Yeah, it sounds to me like you know how the game is going to start and you know how the game is going to finish, but how you get there's a bit like an improvised film or a bit like the way you do your stitching a lot of the time. There's some weird similarities.
Possibly is. I mean, training wise, you would train like third ball attack. So you would serve, you are in control of the ball. You serve in a certain way that you are trying to draw the opponent into putting the ball where you want the ball, and then you have trained how to respond to that. So you
Right.
serve, the ball comes back, and you attack. So the vast majority of points are done within the third, fifth, and seventh ball. So
Right.
you can have tactical approaches. If you are a player like a defensive player, then you rely upon going far beyond the seventh ball and having to get the other player. And you have different styles. You have people who are all out attackers, you have defenders, you have counter hitters, and people specialize in individual styles. There was one guy called Waldner who had the ability, also nicknamed the Magician, because he had the ability to pretty much play any style he wanted, and he consequently ended up being probably the most famous world champion, Olympic champion in table tennis. But it is an absolute passion of mine that I've had since day one. But it is one of those things that you talk about with people, and you kind of expect the eyes to slightly glaze over
If
because
someone
it's
wants to
very
get good at it, should they do that thing where you fold, like get a table, fold it up and play against yourself? Is that a good way to, do you have to put in the reps?
if you're desperate. No, good training is more important than lots of training.
Right.
The hardest thing to do is to break habits. So that's why it is so important, really, from a coaching point of view, is to get someone when they're young. If you are looking at elite level, if you're looking at
Right.
just participation or recreational level, that's a different. I had a different approach to elite coaching, to participatory coaching. So the vast majority of kids that I coached were interested in participating. They wanted just a fun experience from the sport and would never go, probably only ever pick up a bat once or twice at a holiday resort after they'd left school. But if I could provide them with a interesting and educational and positive physical experience as a youngster, i.e., make it fun, but through making it fun, also allow them to develop so they became aware that they were improving, like doing proficiency awards and things like that, then that's far more important. Elite coaching is a completely different ball game, pardon the pun, and is a science, and is literally the 1%. But resource wise, most sporting organizations puts all their money in the elite. But
Yeah.
actually it's the participatory area. So table tennis, I believe, is one of the most popular sports in the world. When you
Right.
go to China, most popular indoor sport in the world, I think, other than maybe volleyball. But you go to China, and literally there are tables everywhere. I mean, you have halls, thousands of people coming in and just playing for fun. Generally, quite a high standard as well. But Mao was very keen. It was the national sport, and he was very keen on encouraging the population to become fit. And they had basically had a choice of Tai Chi or table tennis. So it became their national sport, and they are a large proportion of the of the population. So when you go there, you can see, instead of seeing a famous footballer selling advertising washing powder, you will see Marlin. You'll see massively significant people. While I was there, I was training with this woman. She was number one in the world at the time, and she had bodyguards and crowds of like 20
Wow.
deep outside the hall
Yeah.
when she was training. They were heroes. So we have a different perspective on.
And she would
See,
stand
don't
8 feet from the edge of the table.
yeah. I mean, I always think that going back, when you're doing showcases, when you're trying to show off,
Yeah.
yes, you go back and you lob, and you can get some absolutely wonderful visual entertainment, but it's
Yeah.
not really something that happens. If you can, I watched the last Olympic final. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. There were probably, in the half an hour it took, 40 minutes it took, there were probably, I think there were 3 absolute moments of magic, you know, but like, you possibly would get that at a football match as well.
Yeah. That was amazing. That was amazing. Owen, thanks for having a needle exchange with me. It's been awesome.
My pleasure, Jamie. Hopefully I didn't waffle on too long.
No, it's all good. It is all good. I
Edit a
love it.
lot of it out. Yeah. Brilliant.